Good evening. Welcome to yet another
Evening.
of the new path. Today we will do the chapter 8. But as always, before we start, we always start with a prayer and a chant. So sitting up straight, today the chapter's name is Joy is the Goal. So let us make that as a part of our journey together. So we will tune into the joy aspect that is there in each one of us. Let's bring our hands in front of our heart. Inhale, interlace the fingers. Exhale, letting go of all worries, all tension, anxiety. Inhale, joy. This is called the circle of joy. So do it joyfully. Exhale, bring the hands behind your back, interlace the fingers. Inhale, opening our hearts. Bring the shoulder blades together. Exhale, bring the hands in front of our heart again. Couple of times more. Every time, breathe deeply as we inhale. Exhale and let go of all those negative energy that don't serve us anymore. Inhale joy, peace, positivity. Exhale, bring the hands behind you, interlace the fingers. Inhale, opening the heart. Exhale, hands back in front of the heart. One last time. Inhale. Deep, long inhalation. Interlace the fingers. Exhale. Inhale up. As you exhale, bring the hands to a nice twist to your back. Inhale back. Exhale the other side. Again, inhale. Exhale. Hands behind your back. Interlace the fingers. Inhale. And exhale. With hearts open, let's invoke the presence of God and Gurus here with us. Let's pray together, Divine Mother, Heavenly Father, friend, beloved God, great masters of Kriya Yoga, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Sri Yukteswarji, beloved Gurudev, Paramhansa Yogananda Ji, saints and sages of all religions, dear friend and guide Swami Kriyananda, humbly we bow at thy feet. Dear Masters, be with us here today. Help us to tune into thy consciousness, thy joy, thy blessings, thy guidance. We are thine, be thou eternally ours. Om Shanti Shanti. This is a simple chant. You can chant along.
From joy I came, for joy I live, in sacred joy I melt again. From joy I came, for joy I live, in sacred joy I melt again. From joy I came, for joy I live, in sacred joy I melt again. From joy I came, for joy I live, in sacred joy I melt again. From joy I came, for joy I live, in sacred joy I melt again. For joy I came, for joy I live, in sacred joy I melt again. From joy I came, for joy I live, in sacred joy I melt again. From joy I came, for From joy I came, for joy I live. In sacred joy I melt again. From joy I came, for joy I live. In sacred joy I melt again. From joy I came, for joy I live. In sacred joy I melt again. From joy I came, for joy I live. In sacred joy I melt again. From joy I came, for joy I live. In sacred joy I melt again. From joy I came, for joy I live. In sacred joy I melt again. From joy I came, for joy I live. In sacred joy I melt again. For joy I live. In sacred joy I melt again.
For a few moments, tune into this joy that's always there within each one of us. You don't have to go out anywhere searching for this joy. It's our soul quality. Each one of us is made of this joy. God is Satchidanand. Each soul is a spark of the divine. Tune into this Anand, tune into this joy. With every breath, feel more and more joyful. Feel the presence of the divine at the spiritual eye. Feel the presence of the Guru with us, smiling at us. Om Shanti Shanti. So, in the last chapter, we have been seeing Swami Kriyananda's journey till now, where he he was feeling that he was very different from everyone else. He didn't belong. His ambitions, his aspirations were very different from other people, and that kind of created a kind of friction. Not really, but people didn't understand him and he didn't feel he belonged with them. And so, just as an experiment, he tries to uh, do what they do, conform to their standards. And he realized he was enjoying it too. But again, he kept coming back to that fact that there was something that was missing. And he was always looking for something. He didn't know what, he didn't have an answer. So he again came back and he said, no, in trying to conform to anybody's standards, I shouldn't, let go of the principles. So he comes back to that. And so he holds on to the principle of truth. And then we see that, a lot of other qualities that he's naturally manifesting, they're very yogic qualities. And he's intuitively able to understand a lot of things. And even when, he's having a conversation with his friends who was very worldly, even though, he's very interested in philosophical things. But Swamiji is able to tune into more deeper aspects of those, like non-attachment, where the friend was saying that, the feeling shouldn't be there. Whereas Swamiji said, no, the feelings should be there. It can't be so detached that, there is no feeling. The feeling should be more expansive. And that is what yoga tells us. But he didn't have anybody to say that this is right or this is not right. That somebody who knew the truth, who knew the answers, he couldn't. So he was, even though he was feeling a lot of intuitively, he's feeling it, yet in a larger perspective, they were still very intellectual between him and his friend. So the quest continues. So from principles, he now comes to, what is the goal? He says, joy is the goal. That's a title of this chapter. Joy is the goal. And Master often said that, anything that is created, and especially human beings, what are they all really looking for? Is to escape suffering and to be joyful. To be happy, they look at it in a very limited way, but really what they are looking for is an eternal joy, which they will never be able to find in the creation, in the outer world, because the outer world is the quality of the outer world is that of duality. So for every happiness there has to be an unhappiness. Therefore every joy, there has to be a sorrow. For every day there has to be a night. But people don't understand that. But that is all everybody is striving for, to be happy and to escape suffering. So, and Swamiji is actually going for the more dynamic aspect of it, which is joy, which is not joy. As Master explained, happiness is very circumstantial, right? It is dependent on outer circumstances, whereas joy is not. So even if the outer circumstances are completely, in a not really going well, yet the joy within is always there. We just have to tap into it. The more we live from our center, the more we will be able to tap into it. So first, let us read this chapter, and then we can discuss it.
Chapter 8, Joy is the Goal. My first year at Haverford was spent in joyously welcoming new ideas. My second year, at the age of 18, I tried to digest those ideas and make them my own. During the process of absorption, I greatly broadened my horizons, deepened my inner search, grounded it, and then sent it soaring up in skies of hopeful expectation. Rod had confirmed me in my desire to rise above excessive concern over other people's opinions, while he scoffed at my more mystical preoccupations and inspired me to seek solutions that were wholly grounded in human realities. My own nature kept me wanting to break out from even these confining walls. Rod and I met, however, on the question of right attitudes, such as non-attachment, objectivity, and the question of right behavior in this world. I don't recall that human suffering particularly preoccupied him, but with me it lingered as one of my deepest concerns. Now, however, the problem seemed capable of resolution, not as most people think by medicine, money, or sensory excitements, by a changed attitude, which I realized is basic to true and lasting happiness. An important question remained for me. Is right attitude based on mere mental resolution, or is it born of higher than sensory experience? One night in a dream, I found myself flying through the air. This isn't possible, I thought. People don't fly about like birds. I tried to reason the whole thing out. Was I dreaming, or was I fully awake? Careful logic, dream logic, however, led me at last to the conclusion that in fact I was awake. I was only doing something unusual. What was my surprise then a moment later to wake up? The whole thing, careful reasoning and all, had been a dream. Is life itself, then, I asked myself, only a dream? If so, what is reality? Can we simply resolve in this dream existence of ours to dream better? Can we, by affirmation alone, overcome suffering, achieve good health, and attain happiness? Is suffering, too, only a dream? And if so, could it not be overcome by the simple expedient of strong, positive affirmation? No, I decided. For even if life really is only a dream, the dream logic we use is subject to dream realities. I am getting ahead of myself a little here, but a few months later in Mexico, I met an English girl who had embraced Christian Science. Ignorant as I was of its justifications for what it taught, I remember saying to her, one can't rid himself of life's dream hypnosis merely by wishful thinking. Somehow we've got to discover how to awaken from the dream. And yet affirmation did take me a long way toward achieving everything I wanted. As we'll see also presently, it was an important step in my own progress. First, I needed to affirm my own worth, a truth I had doubted at Hackley and Kent, then affirmed artificially at Scarsdale High. Now, at Haverford, I found myself beginning to discover in myself a basis for genuine self-acceptance. The better I succeeded, the more completely I found that I could express once again that most battered of virtues, trust. In the words of Emerson, I now began to feel that the world was my oyster, that life is basically sunny, right, and beautiful. Even the disapproval of worldly people could no longer dampen my expanding trust in life, and on a certain level, in those very people. For I felt they merely lacked the courage to live up to a truth which they must know deep in their hearts. I longed to share with everyone my consciousness of joy. Trust. The joyful offering I now made to life was selfless and pure. Yet the wise have ever said that one should trust fully only in God. That to place faith in earthly accomplishments is like expecting perpetual stability of a ship at sea. Alas, I hadn't that wisdom to guide me. All my faith I now flung with ardent enthusiasm into the fragile basket of this world. For my sophomore year I was assigned to a suite in Lloyd Hall, which in normal times was reserved for upperclassmen. My roommate, Roberto Pablo Pairo, was from Argentina. He has since become a researcher, translator, and editor for the International Labour Office. Roberto was quiet, dignified, and ever courteous. Ideal qualities in a roommate. We got along well together, though the goals we pursued were different. Roberto's social life was separate from mine, though he seemed to like serious, sophisticated discussions, mostly on such down-to-earth subjects as politics and sociology. He rather marveled that such abstractions as life and truth could command from me the intense enthusiasm they did. My tendency was to seize a thought firmly, wrestle with it for days until I felt I'd master it, and then dash out joyfully in search of friends with whom I could celebrate my victory. To Roberto I must have seemed alternately far too intense and inconsistently frivolous. But thinking itself was, for me, a joyous adventure. It was only years later, after I met my guru, that I learned that thinking is only a bypath to truth, whereas the highest perceptions are possible only when the fluctuations of the mind have been stilled. Rod and I spent much time together, continuing our nocturnal rounds of coffee, drinks, and wee hour philosophizing. But I was beginning also to spend more time now in the search for truth on my own. For my college major, I selected English literature. I loved reading the great works that comprise our true heritage, a heritage of insights and inspiration, not of mere worldly accomplishments. Reading Shakespeare, Sir Walter Scott, Jane Austen, 18th century playwrights, and modern playwrights like John Millington Synge, as well as numerous others, I pondered a new question. In what ways has great literature served the cause of truth? As an aspiring writer myself, I hoped to make whatever I wrote serve as an instrument of the highest insights. But there was buoyant good humour, too, in Rod's and my seeking. We could laugh merrily over the gravest of issues. A few sombre souls there were who viewed our unconventional levity with dismay. I think they considered it a proof that we were dissolute, drowning our misspent youth in drunkenness and debauchery. We had little patience, however, with people who equated seriousness with an absence of joy. Taking my cue from Rod, I would sometimes delight in pretending that we were in league with forces unspeakably dark. The effort to imagine such forces I left entirely to our critics. One of our fellow students, with the appropriate last name of Coffin, used to carry a Bible around with him wherever he went, in order the more sadly to reproach anyone who showed an occasional disposition to kick up his heels. The wages of sin, Coffin would remind us sinners gravely, citing chapter and verse, is death. As my own reputation for cheerful irreverence spread, he took to bringing me particularly the good news. Entering my room one morning before I'd fairly tested the world to make sure it was still there, he sat on the edge of my bed, the Bible open in his hands, looked at me dolefully and sighed. If only religion weren't made so lugubrious, I think many people might be inspired to seek God, who presently equate ministers of religion with undertakers. It was years before I myself learned that religious worship needn't verge on the funereal, that it can be, as Paramahansa Yogananda put it, the funeral of all sorrows. As things stood, I satisfied a natural craving for religious inspiration by laughing at the lack of it in religion as I found it practiced. Had I known better, I might have sincerely worshipped. During our second year at Haverford, someone gave Rod a few guppies in a glass bowl. Guppy, we decided, was far too undignified a name for even such nondescript fish as these. We renamed his new pets accordingly, the sacred white fish. Soon, enlarging on this grand concept, we joyously set out to create an entire religion, complete with ceremonies, dogmas, and ritual responses. I even found a partially completed, abandoned chapel for our rites. Needless to say, our comedy never advanced beyond the playful planning stage, but we had great fun with it. One day, Rod was summoned into the office of Mr. Gibb, dean of our very proper Quaker college. "What's this I hear, Mr. Brown?" he began cautiously, about, how shall I put it, a new religion? Something about the sacred white fish? Have I heard this incredible tale correctly? We never learned whom it was we had chalked into reporting us to the dean, but even the anonymity of this outrage added fresh zest to our game. Yet I also felt inexplicably a deep and almost wishful thrill at the thought of helping to found a new religion. Perhaps it was because the fun we were having over those guppies underscored for me the joy that I missed in church. To me, however, it was more than fun. My search for truth, and for joy as the very essence of truth, held an almost life-or-death earnestness. And I yearned, not only for myself, but for others, to discover new insights into truth. On another matter, I felt less keenly the need to cloak my interest under a guise of playfulness. A continuous aspiration of mine since the age of 15 had been the founding of a utopian community. Utopia literally means not a place. The word is generally used to describe any impractical communitarian dream. I was convinced that an intentional community founded on high ideals could, with down-to-earth realism and foresight, be made viable. During this period at Haverford, and for years thereafter, I devoted considerable time to studying and thinking about the problems connected with such a project. I read everything I could find on the subject. On some deep level of consciousness, I believed that it was my duty someday to found such a community. Among my friends, however, I encountered little sympathy for the idea. When I spoke of it to them, they expressed mild interest, only to lose it altogether when they realized I was in earnest. After that, they left me to dream alone. Undaunted by their lack of interest, I simply broadened my horizons to include the rest of the human race. The more I thought about intentional communities, the more clearly I saw them not as a step backward into primitive simplicity, but as a step forward in social evolution, a natural progression from machine technology and the self-defeating complexity of modern life to a new kind of enlightened simplicity, one in which technology served human, not merely mechanical or economic ends. Decentralization seemed to me a growing need, too, in this age. The essentially sterile demands for efficiency that are served by centralizing power in big industry and big government would, I believe, be balanced by the human and idealistic values that would be emphasized in small, spiritually integrated communities. With my growing enthusiasm for life, I also took increasing pleasure in singing. At last I resolved to take singing lessons. Dr. Frederick Schlieder, a noted pianist and organist, recommended to Mother that I study under Marie Zimmerman, a singing teacher in Philadelphia. She is a real musician, he assured Mother. Your son is fortunate to be in college so nearby. One day I took a train to Philadelphia and visited Mrs. Zimmerman in her studio. 75 years old she must have been at the time. A concert singer in her younger days, her voice, now no longer beautiful, was still perfectly placed. The voice, she explained to me, is the one musical instrument which cannot be seen. I can't show you how to use it, as I could demonstrate how to play the piano. You'll have to listen sensitively as I sing a note, then try to imitate the sound I make. The more perceptively you listen, the more quickly you'll learn. Next, she placed my right hand over her stomach. I'm going to show you how to breathe properly, she explained. As she inhaled, her diaphragm moved downward, pushing the stomach out. I prepared to listen to a full operatic tone. "Moo," came the feeble croak, sounding hardly powerful enough to fill a pantry, let alone a concert hall. I fought to suppress my mirth. But her voice was well placed. Recalling Dr. Schlieder's high recommendations, I decided to study with her. "You will pay me $5 a lesson," she announced firmly. "It isn't that I need the money, I don't. But you need to pay it. It will help you to take your lessons seriously." I didn't want to bother Dad for the weekly fees, so I took a job waiting on tables one night a week at the last straw. From those earnings I paid for my lessons. Marie Zimmerman proved an excellent teacher. Unlike most voice teachers, she wouldn't let me sing on my own for the first weeks. Gradually only, as my placement improved, did she allow me to practice a little at home, then a little bit more. The farther I progressed, the more I found myself enjoying these lessons, until at last they became the high point of my week. Marie Zimmerman was not only an excellent teacher and a fine musician, she was also a remarkable woman. Deeply, calmly spiritual, she was content with only the highest and noblest in everything. She was, in fact, an impressive example of a truth that was becoming increasingly clear to me, that the chief masterpiece of an aspiring artist must be himself. One day at about this time I had what was to me a revelation, sudden, vivid, and intense. It gave me in the space of a few minutes insights into the nature of art and of art's relationship to truth that have guided my thinking ever since. The word art, as Rod and I used it, encompassed all the creative arts, including music and literature. We had pondered reputed authorities whose claim was that art should be for art's sake alone, that it must capture reality as a camera does, literally, that it ought to reflect a sense of social responsibility, to be a purely personal catharsis, or to express the spirit of the times in which the artist lives. Suddenly I felt certain of a truth deeper than all of these. Most artistic theories, I realized, emphasize primarily the forms of art. But art is essentially a human, not an abstract phenomenon. A man's intrinsic worth is determined not by his physical appearance, but by his spirit, his essential attitudes, his courage or cowardice, his kindness or selfishness, his wisdom or ignorance. With art, similarly, it is the artist's vision of life, not his mode of expression, that determines the validity of his work. Inspiration or sterility. Either can be expressed as well through realism as through impressionism. The essential question is, how great does the artist's work reveal him to be as a man? Only if he is great will his work stand a chance of being truly great also. Otherwise it may reveal superlative craftsmanship. But lest plumbers deserve acclaim also as great artists, mere skill cannot serve to define art. Footnote, I discussed this subject in a book of mine, Art as a Hidden Message. My first task as a writer, I decided, was no different from my first task as a human being. It was to determine what constitute ideal human qualities, and then try to develop myself accordingly. At about this time we were given the assignment in English class of writing an essay on our personal criteria for greatness in literature. Not feeling myself competent as yet to explain some of the subtler nuances of my revelation, I confined myself to one aspect of it, one perhaps subtler than all the rest. I wrote that, after reading Homer's Iliad, I had sensed that a blazing white light emanated from it. Later, as I contemplated other great works, I had sensed again in each case a bright light, though in no case so intense as Homer's. Chaucer's light seemed of a duller hue than Milton's, Dante's, or Shakespeare's. From lesser works than these I sensed no light at all. It was as though their authors were spiritually dead. I admitted that I saw no objective reason for giving Homer the highest marks. His epic seemed to me on the surface only a good, rousing war story. But I knew from the light it emanated that it must be a work of superlative greatness. Footnote, Homer was customarily referred to by ancient Greeks as divine Homer. My poor professor, shaking his head in bewilderment, he gave me a flunking grade. Yet even today I consider the criterion of greatness I'd described in that paper to be just and valid. Rod and I continued our discussions on philosophical matters, intellectual integrity, for example, and living in the now, and the importance of non-attachment. Non-attachment, I was coming to realize, is crucial to human happiness. No one can truly enjoy anything that he fears to lose. One evening my non-attachment was put to an unusual test. I was sitting in my bedroom studying for a philosophy exam. The textbook was exceedingly dull. Midway through my study, as I was reflecting glumly that this author valued pedantry over clarity, I heard footsteps approaching stealthily over the dry leaves on the ground outside my window. I glanced at my watch, 9:30, the hour the library closed. One of my friends must be planning to play a joke on me on the way back to his room. Smilingly, I stepped over to the window to show him that I had caught him at his little game. At once the footsteps fled into the night. Whoever it was would, I assumed, smiling, come round through the front door, and we'd enjoy a friendly chuckle before he returned to his own room. To my surprise, no one came. Smiling at the improbable fancy, I thought maybe someone wanted to shoot me. 20 minutes passed. Again the footsteps, this time even more softly over the dead leaves. Who could it be? My friends, I reflected, weren't this persistent at anything. Perhaps it really was someone planning to shoot me. Silently I stepped to the window. Once again the steps faded away quickly into the darkness. By this time my curiosity was thoroughly aroused. How would I ever know who this mysterious intruder was, or what he wanted, if I persisted in frightening him away? I decided that if he returned a third time, I would pretend I hadn't heard him. Another 20 minutes passed. Finally, once again, footsteps, this time more stealthy than ever. Moments later, a shoe scraped lightly on the ledge below my window. A hand grasped the metal grating over the window. Suppressing a smile, I kept my eyes glued to the page before me. Suddenly, an ear-splitting shot. For several seconds I heard nothing but the ringing in my ears. Then, gradually, the clock on my dresser resumed its ticking. A car in the nearest parking lot revved its motor and roared off the campus at high speed. Amazed, I leaned back in my chair and laughed in sheer delight. It seemed incredible that such a thing could have actually happened. I checked my body. No holes anywhere, no blood, no pain. What? Nothing to show for this absurd adventure? I stepped over to examine the window. The screen was intact. What did it all mean? Days later, I learned that that evening had been Halloween, the day when children in America traditionally play pranks. Evidently, some village boy had decided as a Halloween prank to put the fear of God into one of the college students. He'd fired a blank cartridge. I knew one ought to show a greater sense of responsibility toward one's body than I had, but I was happy at least to have had, in this experience, some proof of my non-attachment. Soon, however, I received another test of my non-attachment, and this one I didn't pass so easily. It was a test of my developing ability to offer trust unreservedly. Haverford boys usually dated Bryn Mawr girls. I did so too whenever I had the inclination for it, and the money, which was seldom. I finally met a girl at Bryn Mawr named Sue, who came to epitomize for me everything that was good, kind, and holy in life. Her tastes were simple. Her smile expressed so much sweetness that, whether blindly or with actual insight, I could not imagine her holding a mean thought. Our joy in each other's company was such that we never felt the need to go anywhere in particular. A quiet walk through green fields, a friendly chat, a communion of hearts in precious silence. These were the essence of a relationship more beautiful than any I had ever known before. I had no thought of marriage, of long years spent together, or of anything really beyond the present. Sue was for me not so much a girlfriend as a symbol of my new gift for trust, for giving myself to life joyously, without the slightest thought of receiving in return. How she felt toward me seemed almost irrelevant. It was enough, I felt, that my own love for her was true. And yet there were times in the happiness of our moments together when she would gaze at me sadly. She wouldn't say why. Never mind, I would think. I will only give her the more love until all her sadness is washed away. For Christmas vacation I went home. Shortly after the New Year I received a letter from Sue. Eagerly I tore it open. "Dear Dawn," it began, "there is something I've been needing to tell you. I realize I should have done so early in our friendship, but I enjoyed your company and didn't want to lose it." She went on to say how deeply she had come to feel about me, and how sad also that the realities of her life were such that she could never see me again. She was married, she explained, and was even then carrying her husband's baby. Her husband was in the Navy, stationed overseas. She had realized that she would not be allowed to return to college once it became known that she was pregnant, hence her resolution of silence. But she had been feeling increasingly unhappy about this resolution where I was concerned. She realized that she should have had the courage to tell me sooner. Now she would not be returning to Bryn Mawr to finish the school year. She hoped I would understand the loneliness that had motivated her to go out with me. She had never wanted to hurt me, and was unhappy in the knowledge that such a hurt now was inevitable. The effect of her letter was devastating. I didn't blame Sue. Rather, I sympathized with the predicament she'd been in. I reminded myself that I had never asked her to return my love, that in fact I'd never even contemplated marriage to anyone. But oh, the pain. And had I asked myself, been wrong to trust so completely? But differently. Was the whole structure of my inner development, in which trust played so vital a role, made of sand? Much time was to pass before I understood that life without God is never trustworthy. It is not earthly fulfillment that deserves our faith, but God alone, not outer circumstances, but His inner blessing in the soul. These alone can never fail, never disappoint, for God is our only true love. Until we learn to place ourselves unreservedly in His hands, our trust, wherever else we give it, will be, indeed must be, betrayed again and again. Can a boat ride calmly in a storm? How can a world in constant flux offer more than delusive security? For months to come, my problem was not disillusionment, for I determined with all my heart to trust life in spite of anything that might come to hurt me. My problem, rather, was how to find a firm base on which to repose my trust. I blessed Sue when I received her letter. I bless her even more now, for through our friendship, and even more through our parting, I was brought closer to God.
The long chapter, but it was a nice, so much to contemplate on. So let's go through this. Okay. The first paragraph itself, he's saying, my first year at Haverford was spent in joyously welcoming new ideas. Second year, I tried to digest these ideas and make them my own. Now here he says, during the process of absorption, I greatly broadened my horizon, deepened my inner search, grounded it, and then sent it soaring up in skies of hopeful expectation. It's a very important thing that, that is why, when even on the spiritual path, what is important is to ground it. It is not merely like, otherwise being flexible and, what happens is then you are very wishy-washy. Somebody says, oh, this guru is very nice. Oh, that guru is very, and you want to be on the spiritual path, but eventually it starts becoming like you are following anything and everything and actually nothing. So very important to ground yourself and then be flexible in anything. And when he's talking about creativity, that definitely works. So that everything has to have a grounding, a foundation on which to build it up. And interesting that he found this much early, like, without even coming on the path yet. But he did have, as I said, the samskara of being a yogi. So we can see from the previous chapters how he was tuning into it, the yogic principles. So again, here he's saying, where he says he and Rod and I met, however, on the question of right attitudes. They have been discussing a lot of philosophy. There have been intellectual discussions and all that. But they were coming to some point where he says that there were some differences which Swamiji didn't agree with what Rod had to say. But at the end of the day, he says that we agreed that the question of right attitude, such as non-attachment, objectivity, and the question of right behavior in this world. And Sri Yukteswar, in the Autobiography of a Yogi's Master, writes that Sri Yukteswar always used to say, learn to behave. So it is not just because, oh, I am on the spiritual path, so go around behaving whatever way you want to be. He said, always learn to behave. And again, that is a very important thing, not just in our outward, worldly relationships or other things, but in every aspect, and especially on the spiritual path. All of us need to remember this, that what Sri Yukteswar said, learn to behave. Okay, and now he says, and again, he's always thinking about human suffering. Why are people suffering? What is God? Why is he allowing? So that thought, and it's always ending with, how can I help? So that sharing, that helping others, being very expansive was natural to him, right? Okay, an important question, he says, remained for me. Is right attitude based on mere mental resolution, or is it born of higher than sensory experience? And then he talks about that very lucid dream that he has, where he thinks that, he is actually able to see that he's dreaming, but he says that, I'm not dreaming. Whereas then finally when he wakes up, he realizes, oh, that was a dream. So isn't that what we are all in right now? This is a dream. Master always said that, this God has dreamt all of us, and that dream is dreaming this life, which we take so seriously. We are so caught up in what is happening to me. And sorry, just a minute. What is happening to me, what so and so told me, said to me, I'm so hurt. And and the wise, when finally we wake up from this dream, we realize, oh, that was just a dream. That this is exactly kind of dream that he was having, where he says that he was thinking he was flying, then he was trying to reason it out. Then he says, am I dreaming, am I awake? And even in that dream, there was a logic which said, no, you're not dreaming, you're awake. And then he wakes up. So we will wake up. Sorry. We are all attempting that to wake up. Okay, something is stuck. Okay. And here he says, can we, by affirmation alone, overcome suffering? And
You can pause, please.
sorry?
You can pause and sing. Yeah.
Just
Continue next time also.
I think this is better now. Something seems to be stuck. And he says that affirmation did take me a long way toward achieving everything I wanted. So this is, again, in our path, Master has given us a lot of affirmations. Swamiji has also written book of healing through affirmations. So it is an important tool, even on the spiritual path. We can't, dismiss that, okay, Swamiji at that time, he didn't have a spiritual journey. So, or a master. So he was using it. Now it is not so needed. It is an important tool, which I think we should use it more often, or rather every day, very regularly. Some quality that we want to imbibe, or get back to, or let go of certain habits. Affirmations are a very important tool, as Master says. And here he says, first, I needed to affirm my own worth. He was looking for truth. He was always seeing what is the truth. And in finding out the truth, the first important thing is, as he says, is self-acceptance. Not, the wishful thinking that if, I could be like this, or I could be like somebody else, somebody we look up to. We are who we are. And that is where we have to accept ourselves at that point wherever we are. That is, accepting the truth. Um, and from there, and then, we can develop. This is where I am, and this is what I would want to be. From there, when I don't even know, I'm not even agreeing to, accept myself the way I am, how can I even work on it, on improving it, right? So, and then if when we are looking for truth, this is the main truth. This is where I am standing. So he's saying that, that is where. And from here, he said, I found that I could express once again the most battered of virtues, trust. But unfortunately, he places the trust on life itself, on the world itself. And he says later on, he realizes that anything but God can never be fully trusted, right? And he had to learn his lessons, how he did his, what he's talking about. The next page, he's talking about, that he was thinking. Again, it was very intellectual still. And where Master said that, okay, thinking is a first step, but it is not going to get us there. As he says, after I met my guru, I learned that thinking is only a bypath to truth. So logically, we can never reach there. Whereas the highest perceptions are possible only when the fluctuations of the mind have been stilled. That is why Master gave us, the Hongsa technique, where, the mind is always bombarded with thoughts. Most of the time, we are not even aware. Almost 50,000 thoughts pass through our mind. When we sit down to meditate, the first thing is we start noticing there's so many thoughts. And that's why he gave us the technique of Hongsa. He said it's a very important technique of concentration. The more we start, and the tool we use here is the breath. We start watching the breath and add this mantra. He said it's a Bij mantra, right? The Hongsa technique, when we use that, it starts quietening down. The breath quietens down, the mind quietens down, the heart quietens down, thoughts go away. When the mind is completely still, is when we can perceive things the way they are. We can reach the truth. We can intuitively understand everything. So, but that at that point of time, he wasn't aware of all these things. So he was thinking his way, which will never allow. And here, he and Rod were happy souls, right? They were joyful in doing a lot of things, even in their just trying to discover what is life and the philosophy of it. They were just being happy and joyful. And that is where he talks about this friend, not friend, a fellow student who says appropriate last name of Coffin would keep carrying his Bible and would, the whole thing was about sin. The emphasis on sin. And Coffin would remind us, sinners gravely citing chapter and verse is death. The wages of sinners is death. And again, Swamiji, he says that if only religion weren't made so lugubrious, he said many people would seek God. Now, being a master, later on, he when he met Master, he realized Master would say that, the greatest sin is to call yourself a sinner. He says, all these scriptures and all the way they teach is like, God is some, an old man sitting in some antiseptic cloud over there who is like, sitting and judging everyone. You did this wrong. You did. He says, he's your father. He's the divine father. He is not going to, banish you to eternal hell. I mean, there's also a story of Master meeting, and he was going somewhere where he went to this place. I think it was a bakery or something. This old man was there, and that man's son was a drunkard. And he said, I don't know what to do. And he's not listening. Master, and he was, he was supposedly a devout church Christian, and he would say that, you are, if you sin, then the sinners go to hell. Master said, oh, your son, I have a way to heal him. I mean, he can become okay. Will you listen to me? He says, yes, tell me. He says, you have a huge oven. He says, yeah. So, okay, do one thing. In the night when he drinks and comes, you tie him up and put him into the oven and switch it on. And he said, how dare you say that? How can I do this to my own son? Master then told him, you are a biological father. You are saying you can't do it. And you say that the divine father, who is, the father of the creation, will he do it to any of us? For any, I mean, even if it's any kind of sin, he loves us much more than a biological father can love his son. You can't do it, but you say that the divine father will put us in eternity and, put us in oil and put us on fire and all. How can you even think of it that way? So this is where Swamiji is, coming to that. He's saying, I don't understand. I can't. And he's saying, because of that, I couldn't worship. And had I known better, I might have sincerely worshipped. He learned about his own, the religion he was born into only after he met Master, where he explained what Jesus actually said. And that is when, he started, loving that, what he was learning. So, and then, they are, the Rod and he were like, happy fellows, and they were, making, just being joyful and creating religion around this fish also. And here again, he says that I also felt when they were reported and the dean asked, but he says that I also felt inexplicably a deep and almost wistful thrill at the thought of helping to found a new religion, because he was so disillusioned with what he was around for him, and he was seeking, he wasn't getting any answer. So he was feeling, even if I were to help find a new religion, I would. Interesting that, when Master went, so you see that souls like Swamiji, and there must have been so many of them. Master was sent to the West for this purpose only, that there were these souls, eager souls, who were looking out for answers, who were seeking. There is a quest, and they were not getting an answer, and hence somebody needed to go there and tell. So Jesus Christ went to Babaji. This is the whole crux of what we are learning here. Autobiography of a yogi. He went to Babaji and said, my people have forgotten what true Christianity is. So send somebody over so that they can be taught. When Master went there, somebody asked, is this a new religion? He said, it's a new expression, right? So as we can see that it was needed, right, in America at that point of time, because people were disillusioned with what was being taught to them, the way it was being taught to them. So, and here next one, we are also seeing that he is constantly thinking about setting up intentional communities. Even when he was 15 years old, and now you can see he was researching about it. It wasn't, so when he finally went on to set up Ananda, he had a whole load of research that he had done right from when he was 15 years old. And he is saying that, I read everything I could find on the subject. And on some deep level of consciousness, I believe that it was my duty someday to found such a community. And his friends, the moment they realized he was being earnest, they ran away. They just left him alone. And he is going more in depth about, no, this is not going primitive, but it is the need of the hour now. Setting up such communities. Master also had said that, when there was a talk where that Swamiji would keep talking about that all you young youth should go in north, south, east, west, and set up communities, intentional communities that had the spiritual values. That is the way we can change the consciousness of this planet. That is the need of the hour now. To shift the consciousness of the planet is not by somebody is doing wrong and we add our anger and protest. That's not the way. Each one of us, and the more we band together, the like-minded people who are seeking spiritually, is when slowly the consciousness of the planet can be shifted. Okay, so then he talks about going for his music lessons, and where she's she's an old lady but who was very good singer. And this is a very important point. Swamiji would often talk about this lady when he went to learn singing and all, where she says, you will pay me $5 a lesson. It isn't that I need the money. I don't. But you need to pay. Swamiji always used to talk about this exchange of energy. It's not about just take. And then, when something is being given just, free, we don't give value to that, right? So it wasn't that she needed the money. She says, you need to pay. It will help you to take your lesson seriously. And even Lahiri Mahashaya, when he started, lot of people would come to him. I mean, he wasn't advertising, he was living in this small home. He would sit in his parlor, and thousands of people would come from various parts of India to get Kriya from him. And even in those days, we are talking 19th century, right? End of 19th century, he would charge 5 rupees from each one of them. And it is said that he never touched that money. It was always put in this thing. He never touched that, but he would charge them to give Kriya. So now we understand how important it is that there has to be an energy exchange always. Okay. And then he says that when she would, she was so thorough, she was so perfect in her teaching. He says that she wouldn't even, initial weeks, she wouldn't even let him go home and go to his room and practice on his own, because then he didn't learn properly, and he would continue singing the same thing if he kept practicing at home. So until she was very satisfied, until that time she wouldn't allow. Master Swamiji once, in many of his talks, he said that after 6 months of being with her, training under her, one day finally when he sang, she stopped him and said, that note, that is how you are supposed to sing. And Swamiji, being, I mean, in his very humorous way, he says, 6 months and that one note only. After 6 months is when she finally approved that this is how you are supposed. That is the kind of perfection that she was attempting. And I was listening to one of the talks by Asha Nayaswamy, and she mentioned that at some point after during his training, she said, I'm living the purpose of my life now, whatever is left, is to see you become a great singer, a very famous singer. And she said Swamiji stopped going to her after that, because that wasn't his intention. He was not looking for fame. He wasn't looking for money. So that kind of put him. He stopped going after that. Interesting. He was very clear, though he didn't know what he was, where he will find what he was looking for, what exactly it is. But he was very clear what he didn't want. Now, what he wanted, he's walking towards that now. And now he's also talking about in great depth about art and what it should. And here he's saying that the essential question is, how great does the artist's work reveal him to be as a man? So art, he said, he was, again, one of his talks, he was talking about that, the modern art, he says, I don't understand what it is. Some beams and something, some lines just drawn here and there, and they call it modern art. He said, I don't understand it. And art, as the other the authorities that he's saying, they say that it expresses what the consciousness, and that is exactly the problem. The art today expresses the consciousness, which is so low and so random and vague. And here he has written, let me just read it out. When he's talking about creativity, okay, he says, always, somebody who wants to express creatively, he says, always ask at every stage of the creative process, does this art express my higher self? He says, everything should be uplifting. When you look at a piece of art, it should be uplifting. Just because it is a famous person, he says, it's not necessary that it is uplifting. He says, just don't put it in your house because it is by a famous person. What kind of, he's talked about it in a lot of depth in other, and especially art as a hidden meaning, where he says that it can be a very dark thing. Just because everybody is admiring it doesn't naturally make it a good thing, and you should put it, because the vibrations, we will talk about it in this part where he's talking about the books. So he says that, when you are trying to be creative, does this art express my higher self? Technique is secondary, but the consciousness behind it is all important. Try to let your art reflect the divine creator behind everything, and it will be a source of meaning, strength, and upliftment for all. So it's a very important point for all of us, and especially for artists or those who are, artistically in any field or be very creative. Is it expressing my highest potential? It is, uplifting for anyone who is around. And here is where he talks about my first task as a writer. He says is no different from my first task as a. What is the task of a human being? Is to develop those ideal human qualities, and then this is why masters or avatars come, right? It is not to show us how great they are. Ram, Krishna, Jesus, the line of our gurus, they come to show what is our highest potential, what is that the beautiful qualities that each one of us has within us, but it kind of mask, and what we have to work towards, right? So that is where we need to tune into them. When we say tune into your master, to tune into these avatars, it's to tune into those qualities that we want to imbibe or manifest in ourselves. Okay. And here, as I said, that books he's talking about, master has spoken about it in a lot of his magnetism. And Swamiji had this, instinctively he could tune into the what light he's saying. I could sense it, that it was a bright light, as he could sense. And then there were some authors who said the authors seemed spiritually dead. And master, when Swamiji went to meet, okay, we are almost, okay, a little bit more, and then we will be done with it. So when he read Autobiography of a Yogi, and it was so life transforming for him, he took the bus and went all the way and met master. And he said, this book is so beautiful. I mean, it is life transforming for him. He said, master said, yes, and that is because it has my vibrations in it. Which means that the moment we pick up that book, it's more important that we tune into the vibration, because it has master's vibration. Every word is imbibed with his vibration. It is full of light, right? So we might not be as sensitive to tune into it, but know that it is there, right? People who are sensitive can sense it. Swamiji sensed it, right? So, and he says that my poor professor, for what project he did, he gave him a flunking grade because he didn't understand what you mean. You write about Homer and you're writing that it is a bright light. And he says, but even today, I consider the criteria of greatness I described in that paper to be just and valid. And master has often spoken about, this the magnetic diet. What kind of food you are eating? What kind of, when we are talking, it's not just the food we eat, the physical, but what kind of thoughts you're allowing to, they are food for the mind, right? So what kind of thoughts you're allowing to come to into your mind, what kind of books you're reading, what kind of things you're watching, so what kind of company we are keeping, everything affects us on a very subtle vibrational level. Consciousness, everything gets affected. So and he's again saying, talking about non-attachment, that's something he's coming to understand, that is very, very, very important till we come to non-attachment. And he then goes on to talk about how he learned through these two experiences where there was this shooting, and yet he says that he started laughing. It took him some time. He saw, okay, there is no blood coming, so I'm still alive, and then he starts laughing. And this is something we see later on also, when in Ananda, when we will read about that, when there was this forest fire, everything got burnt. And, that night, Jyotishji talks about it, that night they were all also feeling very bad, and everything, I mean, that they had built gone into ashes. Swamiji is lying down in the temple, I think. And Jyotishji says that, I thought that let me go and, talk to him. He seemed to be sleeping. And he says, as I approached him, I went very close. And what do I hear? He's in his sleep, he's saying, joy, joy, joy. That is what Swamiji was saying. And that, proof we see here also. And the title of the chapter is already that, joy. Imagine losing everything that they had built up, and he was still so joyful. Something to tune into, to understand what it takes to, in the worst of situations to become that. We also have to work on it. And then, the whole point is to, the more centered we are, more we practice on this. And then he talks about that girl who also does it, and who betrays his trust. And he says, in that also, he says, I blessed her when I received, I bless her even more now, because in her friendship and then the parting, I was brought closer. There is always bless. This can be our takeaway, that we go back. There are a lot of situations where we were betrayed. Somebody said something to us, and we're still carrying that. Whenever we think about that person, the thought comes that, oh, he said this to me, or she did this to me. This could be a takeaway that, uh, every that, I mean, we can introspect, you can write in your journal, go sift through that and say that, bless that person, because in their ignorance, if they had not done that to us, probably we wouldn't be seeking God today. So that could be our takeaway, because the only thing in this world of duality which we can trust completely is God. Master said that, even the best of lovers, and lovers say that, I will love you always. But do they one of them dies and goes away. So how can you trust that? Only God and gurus, who are actually the channels for God, are going to be there with us always. They have been with us for eternity. The Guru and the God has been with us for eternity and will be with us for eternity. And that is where we have to place the trust. Everything else, as he says, just bless them and let them go. And thank them. Gratitude that because they did that, we are who we are. We are able to, understand that this world is not what we really want. What we want is God, or self-realization. So with that, any thoughts before we close? Anybody wants to share anything? It's already 8:42. Should we close today's session? Thank you for joining.
Thank you, Janti.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.